as well.
You're live now, guys.
Right. Thanks. Hello, everyone. Again, it's my immense pleasure in introducing a great panel for you today, which is perfectly balanced for rich insights coming firsthand from social entrepreneurs, someone leading an incubator, and also we have someone representing from the and we have Eva Gumnishka, the founder and CEO of Humans in Loop, which is rebuilding the lives of conflict-affected communities. Eva, welcome to the panel. We have Christopher Hutchison, who's the CTO at ProsFit, and they are into making affordable, reliable, desirable prosthetic products and services. Christopher, very happy to have you in the panel today. We have Lachezar Afrikanov, who is leading the Social Innovator Hub in Bulgaria, which nurtures and helps grows social impact ideas and projects. Lacho, really happy to have you as well. And last but not the least, probably one of the most important members of the ecosystem and the panel, we have Emiliya Angelova, who's a partner at EmpactFund, who invests in purpose-driven companies which are out there to create a social impact. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the panel today. Let's maybe start off the discussions with my first question for Eva. Eva, your work relies on working with IT companies on one hand and people from conflict-affected regions on the other. And we are noticing trends where the IT industry output or demand is decreasing and is being rather uncertain in the near future. How do you see this development impacting your work?
First, thank you very much, Bhushan, for having me. I'm really pleased to have you as our moderator, as well as the rest of the panelists. In terms of the most recent developments, I'm not sure whether our companies are representative because we've even seen an increase in the demands of our clients. So for us, the effects of the crisis have not been that bad at all. And I'm not able to say whether that's because of the specific niche that we're working with, which is computer vision and artificial intelligence, because maybe, of course, some companies in the industry have still been quite affected. But at least of what we can see from our clients, their operations have not been disrupted almost at all. And in fact, they have been quite happy to be able to count on us for uninterrupted operations as well, just because kind of compared to more traditional outsourcing companies that have their big offices with a lot of people, we're already digital and based on fully remote work. So we've been quite, a good fit for a lot of companies that want to continue.
I think we have some connection issues with Eva, but we will.
Yeah, it's not just me then. I don't. Okay.
We all had that small panic attack, finding out who is responsible for this. We have some issues with this connection. We'll get back to Eva in a bit when we see her online again. But let me take this opportunity to now jump to Lacho. Lacho, interesting points by Eva, the opening comments where she sees that despite the general opinion, her business or her model is not really impacted in a negative way. Let me hear some of your opinions on the kind of work that you do. So you run the Social Innovators Bulgaria Hub, which is supported by grants currently. And I remember that last time we spoke, I remember you were applying to some more EU programs, which would help create social innovation in Bulgaria. But in the recent developments, in the light of COVID, have you, in particular, seen any shift of the focus and priorities in the funding and resources available for someone like you If yes, in which direction?
Thank you very much for this important question, and thank you for having me on this panel. I personally, for our organization, we are still lucky because we kind of have long-term grants that support our activity. But this is on, I would say, personal organizational level. We have ensured our subsistence, so to say. In terms of our activities, unfortunately, we kind of stopped the activities because we are actually, as a social innovators place, we are doing mostly trainings and events, and we needed to shut down for a while, which is not good news for us, and I think it's not good news for the field that we're operating in, because after all, it takes so much effort to inspire people and to raise their awareness that we need to go beyond our personal needs and do something for the community. And now we are kind of in the, I would say, the zero starting position. In terms of the grants, I'm not sure how positive to speak about the grants. Also hearing what the representative of ABF said, that maybe it's not the best way to rely only on grants, but still, as a person from the NGO sector and kind of being in this environment, not the social business environment, more the NGO sector, we are super reliant on grants. In that sense, it's a bit of concern, I would say, that looking what our national authorities, so to say, are kind of doing and planning to do with the available funds. It's totally understandable that now we have immediate needs to support the health system, to support the people that are most in need. And this, unfortunately, leads to kind of shifting the focus from long-term measures, from long-term priorities, like I would say social innovations, building this system. And this will probably lead to lack of funds in that direction. But not to be too negative, I would just quickly say that to me, it's an opportunity for all us that are relying on grants, like NGO people dedicated to social innovations, to be really creative and inventive and to look for funding in places that we never thought that might be some funding for us.
Interesting thoughts, Lacho. And yes, I personally believe that there are some interventions which can only be supported through philanthropic money, but there are many such problems out there, or things which can be solved or served through the market-led approach. And I'm gonna move to Emiliya. I see Eva, you're back. I'm just gonna come back to you after the first round gets done. Good to have you back. But Emiliya, I want to jump to you because Lacho represents more of a model which is depending on grant, even though he sees that there is a specific need to transition to being less donor dependent, right? And you are leading a fund which invests money in purpose-driven organizations, which again is having a social impact, but with a different approach and having a robust business model in place. So, Emiliya, now because of the whole COVID situation, on one hand, I would assume that you would have plenty of interesting ventures now to have a look and scout who are solving pressing problems. And they could be creating a real impact, but at the same time, the solutions and markets would be so untested and combined with uncertain return expectations. How do you see your business models or returns, or the returns that you have to give your investors, all getting disrupted, all getting changed because of this situation? Because you'll have many such projects which are trying to solve new problems, which are the solutions are not tested, the markets are not tested, and the return expectations are also not certain. So how do you see that situation for someone like you who's leading a fund?
Thank you, Bhushan, and thank you to all of the organizers. Hopefully hear me clearly. Basically, I slightly disagree with Lacho. I'm gonna say why. I don't think we are in the 0 point. I honestly think that this crisis is actually a good thing for the social innovation field. Of course, it's not a good thing from a humanitarian perspective, but from a business perspective, we, for example, see a definite rise of digital health, e-learning, mental health platforms, etc., which are traditionally associated with social innovation, which is extremely important. They were somehow hidden back in the backyard, and now they're on the rise. Of course, it doesn't mean that every startup that is doing digital health is a good startup, but still the attention is already there. So this is one of the effects. And the second effect, which is very important, is that actually the crisis at the moment is serving as a pre-selection for investors. So it kind of have this natural differentiation between strong startups with strong teams and resilience, wiped up of the market some way or another. I don't want to be bad, and mean, but that's the reality. And then the third one, which is something very important, I think, for social entrepreneurs, it's also the fact that the crisis kind of normalized the valuations. We had these very inflated valuations before the crisis, which were kind of crazy. And now this kind of balance this out, and combined with this pre-selection that I mentioned, this is actually making good startups, not only social ones, but also in particular social ones, standing out, and they have actually bigger chance of getting a funding, because basically the market is kind of dried out in the moment in terms of good startups. A lot of them have cash problems. A lot of them are trying to pivot, although they don't even need to pivot. So it's kind of a chaos out there. So good ones are actually standing in a much better position than before that.
Question to you. When you say good ones, how do you define the good ones? Or what do you mean by the good ones?
Yeah, well, there are a lot of there are a lot of markers of being a good one, but in particular, in terms of the crisis, there are a couple of things that we're looking at, and I'm pretty sure that every investor out there is looking at. One is definitely the cash management. It's liquidity management is extremely important nowadays. How do you plan? What kind of cash buffer do you have, etc. Resilience is a very important thing. Resilience is a bit of a subjective factor. Resilience in terms of to know when to pivot and when not to pivot. You should not be just all over the place and just don't know what to do. You should be focused on your mission and your vision. And then if there is really the necessity, then you should be able to pivot your model. But that's not really necessary with all of the companies out there. And I would say the third thing is the willingness to let your current investors or potential investors be more hands-on on the business. That's a very big differentiator for a good manager and a good team. Everybody knows that startups are very much focused on their ideas and their businesses. But in such situations, it's a very clever action to actually let the investor be more operational with your company.
Right. Thank you for those insights, Emiliya. Really good points. Chris, I'd like to move on to you from your opening statement, and also a specific question at you, because you're into making a product, and my last social venture was also making a product. So I'm really happy to have you on the panel, firstly, and I can totally understand what you might be going through. But yeah, again, you're making a product which is creating a big impact in the lives of the many, clearly. And we've witnessed how the global supply chain disruption has happened due to COVID, and it has caused problems to many companies because some of their key components or even the non-key components were coming from abroad, mostly from China and other emerging economies. it's not only about the Chinese products, but also the global supply chain has been disrupted. So, as as for someone like you, has there been any impact on your work, on or your products, or any other aspect of your business due to the recent COVID lockdown disruptions and supply chain disruptions?
Bhushan and Alex, everyone involved in organising this today. Definitely really interesting panel discussion. So thank you, everyone. Good question. Definitely selling physical products is a challenge, and it's something that we've largely forgotten to do in the world today, with the shift to digital and everything else. I think one of the major shifts for us has been that our customers ultimately are, in the large case, medical clinics who rely on seeing patients to be able to provide the service. Right now, almost all of that has stopped. So we're in a situation where our customers have essentially gone offline. Now, at the same time, in many ways that has kind of helped us reinforce our focus, and I think Emiliya used a very good word earlier, which is resilience. I think right now is absolutely the time for resilience, and you have to see the opportunities with the challenges right now. In many ways, what we were doing up until now, people were so used to doing the traditional way, and yes, there were a lot of problems with it, but it was fine, it was still working. People suddenly now sitting at home coming to the realization, what we were doing before doesn't make any sense anymore.
Right.
And actually now is a very interesting time because we're starting to have customers and people who also had rejected us previously coming back and saying, that thing you told me about, can we have another conversation about that? Which is very interesting. Also from a supply chain model, definitely people, I think, are going to move away from some of the just-in-time delivery. Definitely having supply chains that span the earth and rely on, big shipments out of China, things like this are going to change. And so that's also something that, in a way, thankfully, has actually fit quite well with our model because we are looking to get manufacturing as close to the end customer as possible. So we think it will be mid to long-term positive for us. It's just short-term challenges and opportunities.
Interesting, and that's a very good point, Chris, because no one really knows how the near future would pan out because the rate of change is so rapid. You have new developments happening literally every day. So you don't know how to respond really. You make a plan and that gets out of the window because something else just turned up in front of you. So yeah, I can understand, Chris, and thank you for your opening words and the answer on that question. Let me go back to Eva. I'm really happy to have you back. Eva, you were explaining on how contrary that there are opportunities out there for your business. And my next question to you was exactly that whether you see possibilities in the near future. And I was very happy to see that there is actually an opportunity to scale by which you mentioned in the opening comments. Now, tell us a bit more about two things. First is what new opportunities are coming to someone like you who's essentially in the service segment, creating a social impact. And the second sub question is, how do you scale up or how do you scale? I mean, is it about creating more opportunities? You just scale up laterally or vertically as well? So what's your take on that?
Yeah, sure. Sorry about disappearing suddenly. My phone actually got overheated, so I had to put it in the freezer for 30 seconds so that it could, be okay again, so that I could use it.
See, now we have a need for a new phone which is able to withstand these digital conversations over the whole day. So any aspiring entrepreneurs out there, we clearly have a problem for you. Sorry, Eva, please go ahead.
It's gonna become a big need with all of these conferences. Yeah, definitely.
That's good.
Yeah, in terms of opportunities, it's actually been quite an interesting time for us because in addition to our standard markets, which are general computer vision applications for like industry or drones or retail and a lot of other applications. We've been thinking about and starting to tackle the medical AI market, which is basically really, really growing right now. I think it's one of the industries that's receiving the most attention and the most investment, just because it's really, really relevant. A lot of medical AI companies have shifted to producing models for COVID detection. So, also as a sign of solidarity, we've also offered to label data for free in order to help them. And we've kind of been exploring the whole scene and ecosystem. And you guys, I mean, you're not going to believe how messy it is and how strange it is, because a lot of actors are there and are willing to help, but there is a big lack of data that, hospitals are not able to share enough data so as to build effective models. And then there's a big struggle to find out exactly what type of models to build in order to assist clinicians in identifying COVID and making their work faster and more efficient, especially in remote places and hospitals that are understaffed. So it's a very dynamic environment, which is also very messy. So getting into it has been really exciting. And it was actually great timing for us, because we also started working with a pool of Syrian doctors who are refugees in Turkey. So we've been reaching out to them, identifying their skills, and they're amazing, amazing people with very high level of skills who are currently unemployed. So for us, it was just seeing, both of these needs and identifying how to bridge them. And of course, it's a quite complicated market. That's not, the sales cycles are very long. But slowly but surely we're moving in that direction, and it's great because it's a completely new market for us. And I think that when thinking about what opportunities there are to tap into that were caused by COVID, I think that any type of medical and healthcare applications are definitely a big market that's going to be developing much more in the future. So that's basically our way of scaling. See what we can do and how we can contribute to the ecosystem. So, for example, we're developing a mask detection algorithm that's going to be quite useful when companies or public security has to monitor whether people are wearing their masks. So we're trying to develop new data sets for that are very diverse. They're able to identify not only if you're wearing a mask or not, but whether it's correctly worn, whether it can detect whether the mask is very colorful or whether you're just wearing a bandana. So it's a lot of there are a lot of ways in which you can get more and more profoundly into those applications and see how they can be really applied in real life so that they're relevant.
Thank you, Eva. It's really nice and to see that you're seeing opportunities and plenty of them, and I'm sure you'll convert these opportunities and create a great impact in the already wonderful work that you're doing. Thanks for those points, Eva. Something from you, I saw that you're clearly seeing this problem as the situation as a birthplace for many opportunities. And I'm sure there are a lot of people like you in Bulgaria and elsewhere who are seeing the situation in the same perspective. And now I want to actually move on to Lachezar, because he's running the Social Innovators Hub in Bulgaria. And Lachezar, I'm sure you have a lot of people like Eva in Bulgaria who are optimistic, who believe in themselves and who believe in their skills and their knowledge, and they can probably come up with some great ideas, some products and solutions, or even some small projects, which literally can impact a lot of lives in this situation that we have. You also mentioned in the opening statement that you do have some long-term grants, so I'm very happy to hear that. So you are a bit secure for some time. Tell me now that in the light of this recent COVID situation, how do you or how does the Social Innovators Hub in Bulgaria plan to support, nurture, and grow even the smallest of ideas which have the greatest impact potential? How do you see yourself playing a role in this?
Thank you. First, just a quick comment. It's super inspiring to listen to people that say the crisis is an opportunity, not something negative, as I highlighted in my first statement. Maybe just really a few words to put our organization in the context. The Social Innovators Hub is actually part of a project which is called Social Innovators, and the idea is to train future generations of change makers. So it's a bit more on those change makers that are not so much into social business, but really they find a challenge, they come to a kind of a innovative solution for the common good, and they go for it. And our idea of our hub is to be like a training base, I would say, of students from Bulgarian universities that would like to engage in this change making, shaping the future in a different way. So actually now what we did so far, we are at this phase where we have developed our training program, which we will start hopefully in September, and we also develop an apprenticeship program for students that want to join NGOs they admire, they're inspired by, and they want to feel what is to be, I would say, a social innovator from the perspective of the NGO sector. So this is our traditional plan before the virus and before this situation. And now actually we kind of feel that we need to be maybe one idea more proactive into this, because training people now, it will probably give a positive effect in 2-3 years time if they start joining the forces of the social innovators. So we kind of see that when we open, maybe to be more proactive in giving the opportunity to any team, any group of people that would like to have a working space for discussing and brainstorming and actually implementing their ideas, to use our space for free, because after all it is supported by a long-term grant. It is in the heart of Sofia, so a very you've been there. It's a convenient place to stay. So for us, it will be a pleasure to provide this kind of support. Of course, just very quickly, because our organization, we're involved in different projects, we are thinking how to do this cross project connection so that we can support more people into this direction, not like because now there are so many different topics. Yeah, that's in brief, but I can elaborate further later. So.
Thank you. And yes, Lacho, I've been to the hub, the space. It's absolutely amazing. It's very, very kind of you to let it out for people in this entrepreneurial space. If someone is listening, and if someone hasn't been to the hub, I'm not sure if the hub is open, Lacho, for people to visit.
No,
okay, so
that was a good offer. It's not open, but you can use it. It's
there's always a asterisk. Conditions apply. Conditions always apply. But when things get back to the new normal, and then when the hub is open, I would recommend all our viewers to please have a visit to Lacho's hub. It's really, really cool. It's incredible, and you can find a lot of information out there from him. So thanks for that insights, Lacho. Let me go to Emiliya now, because we've had some really interesting flow of discussions. On first hand, Eva representing the positive and optimistic social entrepreneurship entrepreneur perspective. Lacho, offering his help, his support to the best that he can to nurture these ideas. And in my personal opinion, Emiliya, I've seen most social initiatives or most social projects are really incredible in going from 0 to 1. And they are, greatly applauded for that. They get press attention. They get, a lot of coverage. But what we see really is they are not able to go from 1 to 10, because most of them, and including myself to some extent, are really successful in delivering a great pilot project. But when it comes to converting a project into a sustainable business model, that's where I would say a lot of them fail. So I want to understand from you, for our viewers, and especially for the social change makers out there, what should they consider in order to attract the attention of funds like yours, funds like the ones that you represent, which would help them to go from 1 to 10, because from 0 to 1, they can go with some grants or personal savings. That's not really a business. That's an impact. That's a project. And that's where most of us die. And we don't want that to happen. So tell us what should we, or what should the entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs be wary about to go from 1 to 10, and in order to get attraction or attention from funds like yourself?
Okay, thank you for this question. I'm not gonna tell the obvious stuff. You know, you should have a great team, you should have a great product or service, etc. I mean, you can see every standard scorecard, and then you should be able to tick the boxes. You know, this is pretty clear. But I think something which is very important, especially for social entrepreneurs, is that they should not label themselves as social. They should really try. I'm saying this every time. They should really try to just label themselves and present themselves in front of the investors and the public as entrepreneurs. They're in the same league as the rest of the guys who are on the market. And they should not like just put this label there. Of course, they can elaborate on their impact, but what an investor, even an impact investor, want to see first of all is business first. That's always the case. So you want to see some traction, you want to see the team, you want to see some business metrics, the product or service, etc. And then the add-on of the impact is especially important, of course, but that comes after you have realized that the product is great, because you know, there are a lot of social entrepreneurs out there that think that the social element is kind of is compensating in a way for the lack of a proper business model. That's really not right. And I mean, if this is the case, if really there is not a sound business model, then there are different sources of funding which they should consider, and they should really not waste their time, because fundraising with an investor is extremely time consuming. Just as an idea, between 6 and 8 months. So this is a process that you should not get into if you're not sure that venture capital or after that, you know, private equity, etc. it's not your thing. So this is one thing. Don't label yourself as social. Just play with the rest of the guys and try to beat the rest of the guys and be better than them, not just by the impact, but actually with your business. And the second thing I would like to stress out is be proactive. You know, I think with social entrepreneurs, they're a bit you know, standing in the back, and they're, you know, like maybe because some of them are coming from the NGO side, maybe they're thinking of themselves as, you know, not proper business people, but they are. If you're doing a social business which has a business model, you are a business person. So it doesn't really matter what you have in your resume. It's about where you want to go with your venture. So I would really say be proactive. If you're sure, as a first step, as I said, you should be sure that venture capital is for you. If you're sure of that, then be very proactive, because the rest of the entrepreneurs out there, the traditional ones, they're exploiting every opportunity to meet with investors, to contact them. And I think the social ones, they're a bit, you know, lagging behind that. They're not so proactive. And as also as a follow-up of what I said earlier, I think now it's a great moment to stand out from the crowd and to actually show a good business and to actually get funding. So I think now it's extremely important to be proactive. And there is still, I mean, in a couple of months, people are anyway gonna go back on flights, business meetings, etc. But please, guys, use this time to get in touch with investors. Now it's extremely important. Everybody is at home. Of course, everybody is on calls every day, but it's quite easy compared to usual times to actually get somebody's attention. And maybe one last thing that I didn't mention before. Besides the fact that the crisis, in my opinion, is an opportunity for the social entrepreneurs, the fact is also that liquidity is out there. cash is still out there. And investors still have to make investments, and actually now more than ever. So they're looking for opportunities, and it's a really great moment to get their attention. So please be proactive about it.
So interesting insights, and I really loved the candid answer that you gave us, Emiliya. Not the traditional great team, market product fit, and all that.
No, I mean,
It's a very good answer, and I could relate almost everything to it because if I can synthesize your answer, it's about changing the mindset first yourself. Like social entrepreneurs just don't always ring the social bell. You are creating value through your products and services, which is solving a problem, and people are willing to pay for it. End of the story, right? If it creates an impact, great. And I completely agree with you on being the proactive part. I've seen that lacking myself in let's say in my community, in the social entrepreneurs community. I think we should really step up the game at least on that part. And the thing that you mentioned, don't label yourself as social entrepreneurs all the time. I would agree with you because I had accidentally visited a lot of, as you say, traditional entrepreneurship summits. And the moment I used to exchange my cards and say, "Oh, I'm running a social enterprise," okay, thank you. I mean, I was just starting out. I was too naive to understand how to pitch yourself, maybe. But I agree with you, that doesn't work. But it works really well in social entrepreneurship conferences. So again, back to basics 101, understand your target group and pitch accordingly, right? So I think that's a very important advice for us. Chris, good. I saw that you were, Chris, are you still with us? Oh, okay, perfect.
Yep.
Chris, again, coming back to you, product company, my favorite. So I have one question, again, very much got to do with the products because I'm super passionate about making physical products myself. So we are seeing a trend now, Chris, where a lot of countries are becoming more self-reliant in terms of producing goods and services, to the extent that they also want to venture into making the raw material, the parts, and all those things which go into the product that they consume. Um, in this shift of focus or in this shift of priorities, how does it impact a product company like yourself or product companies in general, where all of a sudden now you have to start producing components or parts, let's say in Europe, which is perceived, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is perceived to be more expensive than emerging economies in Asia or South America or elsewhere. How does that really impact product companies in general? Does it impact your costing, your pricing, or things like that? And and lastly, do you think there is a optimistic scenario for product companies in general in the post-COVID world?
Very interesting question. Uh, Definitely, there's a lot to unpack from that. Coming back to the previous conversation and comment Emiliya made, and you were saying, yes, first of all, I think you're an entrepreneur first, and if you can solve a problem in a way that you can charge more for it than it costs you to deliver, you have a business. If then it also helps some people in the world even better, you have a business with a social impact. It's a really interesting question right now. I think we're at a point where, in a strange way, this may be the greatest time to be an entrepreneur. Because to be an entrepreneur means typically you see a problem. And I think we could solve it. And right now we're actually in a situation where what's happening is, like, the global context has knocked over the table. This is happening in slow motion, and nowhere knows where the pieces are landing yet. And if you're one of the first people who's really being proactive right now to be ahead of the game and kind of control that shift, I think it's a very powerful position to be in right now, because it will also impact how the world works going forward. So you're right. So one of the questions in relation to the, say, wanting to have tighter supply chains, not rely on the other side of the world, is also governments are starting to realize, oh, you mean we didn't produce any medication in the country? You mean we didn't? No. Questions like that suddenly in hindsight, it's like, how did we let that happen? So actually one of the, shifts that's happening right now is that, we have been increasingly in, I think you would say, B2G conversations, which is business to government. So we were already over the last year and a half shifting from selling one-to-one to individual medical clinics, because you've got a relatively high sales involvement, and then you're dealing with one clinic. We realized we could transfer a similar energy and actually have conversations directly with governments and say, listen, you have 80% of the amputees in your population who have access to no prosthetics whatsoever. We could create all of the infrastructure that you need in the country to fit those additional 80%. And you're going to see a massive return on investment from a health economics, social, right? Let's say the balance of tax and unemployment, medical, it's like a 10 times return on investment. It's very clear. Now, I think that's one of the things also with an entrepreneur or as an entrepreneur, right? Who are you creating the value for? And if you can align who you're creating the value for and actually figure out how to get them to be the ones to pay you, you're going to be in a much stronger position. And I think that that's one of the things that often is the mistake. You're creating value ultimately for one target group, but you're charging a different group. That's one of the things that, yes, to come back, I think right now is an important moment. A lot of things are going to shift right now, and whoever is the most proactive to do it is going to be very successful.
Amazing. Thanks for that perspective, Chris. And at this point, I would like to take the opportunity to just synthesize and condense all my learnings, as I would say, and also the conclusion of this panel before we move on to the audience questions. So, Chris and Eva, I think it was extremely motivating to listen to you both, who I see there is some resonance in the words that you guys have just shared with us. I clearly see opportunities. Chris, especially when you say that more problems means more opportunity, I just couldn't agree more. I was having a TV interview back in India for my social enterprise, and the interviewer asked me, what do you think is the future of social entrepreneurship in India? I said it's the greatest simply because it may sound odd, and I said that on national TV that it may sound odd, but our country has so many problems, and that was 3 years before the COVID situation came in. So there are clearly a lot of opportunities for change in education, in water, sanitation, not just in energy that I was trying to service. There are plenty of opportunities because there are plenty of challenges. So, Chris, I completely agree with that perspective that now is the fertile ground for social innovation to rise in. Also, I think, Eva, from a perspective like yours, who are not just seeing the opportunities, but you convert them into something meaningful and think about scaling and not just delivering the first blow. You also need to think about how to scale and expand and convert those opportunities. So that was my key takeaway, Eva, from you. Lacho, I think people like yourself who are representing entities like the Hub also have a big role to play for social innovation to nurture, because you would give them the support system from coming from 0 to 1. But I think people like you are also one of the most important in the ecosystem, because when you are nurturing someone from 0 to 1, you also must imbibe the principles which Chris mentioned about creating value which people are willing to pay for. And it also resonates with Emilia's points that we need a shift in the mindset of the social entrepreneurs, that they need to think of themselves as entrepreneurs who are creating products and services which someone would pay for. So if you, at that crucial point in the journey, Lacho, if you can imbibe those values or that kind of mindset in people from 0 to 1, that guys, great, you're out there to save the world, but you need to make money as well. I cannot feed you for all your life, right? So you have a very important role to play in that sector, Lacho. And in this post-COVID scenario, I think it becomes all the more relevant. And Emiliya, my key takeaway from the panel discussion from you was, again, as you beautifully shared with us in the second round that we social entrepreneurs just need to think of themselves as someone who's creating an impact, but also needs to have a very strong business case to continue their journey from 1 to 10, where unfortunately we lose amazing world-changing ideas. And if that is imbibed in them from an early stage, I think that would be excellent. So thank you all for sharing these insights. It was truly enriching, and personally, I learned a lot from this conversation. We're just going to open the panel for audience question, and we have one question from Sonia. And feel free to answer. Just go if you think anyone would want to answer this question. The question is, what would you recommend to people who want to start their journey in social entrepreneurship now? Any guidelines on how to build social business ventures in the challenging times that we live in? So, Sonia, the summary that I just shared pretty much answers it. But guys, any tips from you? How about Eva and Chris, if you want to have a go, because we represent the practitioners side. How do you start?
I can share a bit about how I started my venture.
Sure.
Because it differs a little bit from a model that we're seeing a lot recently, which is hackathons. Because during a hackathon, you gather a great team, you design something very, very quickly, and then you see how it can be applied. Of course, with consultations with experts and so on. But in a lot of cases, what I've observed from products or services designed at hackathons is that they're not really designed in the best way so as to be relevant to the market and to the ecosystem. One example is a platform that was developed on one of these hackathons for donations and optimizing donations that the programmers who developed it, invested a lot of time and effort in, and then they just reached out to me because they were looking for a host for their platform, somebody who could actually apply it, maintain it, implement it, and make it survive, because otherwise, they just move on with their lives. So in the end, for example, in that case, I put them in touch with the Red Cross to see if there are any opportunities for collaboration. But in the end, for the Red Cross, it wasn't the right solution. So I think that a lot of effort is being put right now into designing great and innovative solutions, but there's not too much being done as like the first steps in the preparation of your social enterprise, which are just get to know everybody in the ecosystem, what they're doing, what the gaps are, what they need help with, because you don't want to be designing things that people are already doing. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. You want to take all of these structures of support for something that you're going to build, and you want to make sure that it's also relevant for your users. You have to implement some design and other methodologies to make sure that it's actually useful. And of course, if you want it to be a social enterprise, you have to make sure that you're actually making an impact and that it's a positive impact, because sometimes who knows, even with the best intentions, you might end up messing things up. So in any case, yeah, my suggestion is just to get to know everybody in the ecosystem, like all of these NGOs who have already been working for years on this social problem that you're trying to solve, and then just try to see what the gaps there are.
Interesting. Thanks for the answer, Eva. We have one more question. Panelists, feel free to answer if you think that lies in your domain or after that. So we have a question from Irina, and a very interesting question again. What could quote unquote traditional entrepreneurs, as you call them, learn from social entrepreneurs? And there's always this fight and divide, and what are these difference and traditional. I don't even know if there's a word called traditional entrepreneur.
Yeah.
No, there I can take this. I can start here. When I say traditional, it's just to kind of make the differentiation that the social entrepreneurs are making for themselves. Normally we don't kind of we don't kind of differentiate them. I mean, our fund, for example, it is only focused on social impact. So we look at business metrics, as I mentioned, plus impact metrics. We don't invest or even consider investing in companies that are not having a positive impact, which we have defined very in a very big debt. You can just take it from the website. I'm not going to go over that now. But the fact is, of course, there is not a traditional entrepreneur term. But what I mentioned is that the social ones, they try to segregate themselves from the rest of the entrepreneurs. And actually, some of them do it because they think they're better. Some think they're worse. Both scenarios are not good. What I think it's tradition, so the rest of the entrepreneurs can take from the ones that are really focused on social impact is the empathy that social entrepreneurs have embedded in their products. The good social entrepreneurs have embedded in their products. So this empathy, I think, is it's a key quality for every startup and for every business, because empathy towards the target group, your clients, customers, etc., it's very important, and especially when it's genuine, people know that. And I think it's a big differentiator between a good business and just a business.
Thank you. I think that's a real struggle to define. Because I remember still when I was having discussion with my friends, and I used to tell them, oh, but my venture falls in the social enterprise category. And my friends used to say, oh, wait, I'm also creating jobs. Yeah, not really. So, everyone wanted to be like, oh, I'm also having a social impact, but there's a gray area. We can debate about that. So there's a real fight in this. But we have a follow-up question for you, Emiliya. Can you elaborate a bit more on the impact metrics you're looking at?
Well, so for us, okay, I'm going to go through the content of the website. I didn't want to do that, but very briefly, there is a huge dispute around the world what impact means. Everybody knows that it's not a clearly defined term. In Bulgaria, it doesn't even exist. So social entrepreneurship, it's not really defined, or at least it's not defined as we want it to be defined as innovation. But what we actually look at, we also pre-crisis, we have defined three areas that we want to create positive impact. And this should be the core business of our enterprises. One is the planet. So any kind of circular economy solution, green tech, environmental solution, new materials, substitutes for plastic, etc. Right. Then we have the human, where we look at the health tech solutions. Mental health in particular is very important for us. And then we have a bit of an unorthodox element, which is creative industries. So we look at the companies that are related in that are doing art entrepreneurship or anything related with creativity. Not so much education, but education also falls into this pillar. Because our long-term vision is that we don't just need, healthy people and healthy planet, but we also need creative people that can freely express themselves and work towards the new world. So this is kind of the overview, and the impact metrics that we have is basically how much, of course, the entrepreneurs that we are considering are contributing to any of those pillars. And the very important part is if they're actually tackling a root cause of a problem, or they're just going on the surface offering something which is going to be like an interim solution to the problem. There are, of course, funds that are also looking at interim solutions. They're very important if we want to go and move forward. But what we are looking at are really disruptors that are tackling the root cause.
Thanks for those points. And we have the last question. We have to be very, very quick on the answer. Chris or Lachezar, feel free to answer them if you think that falls in your scope. The last question is, social entrepreneurship is quite broad term. One could say that it is now a trendy term. I would agree with that a bit. But it also creates the danger that a lot of people label themselves or their enterprises as social. How to deal with this? How we define it better? Otherwise, in some time, everybody will be social. Yeah, I don't know, Chris or Lachezar, just like a very quick 2-minute question, 2-minute answer. Yeah.
Can I 30 seconds and then hand it to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe in that respect, yes, the labels get a little bit confusing at a certain point. But the question is, if you're an entrepreneur, either it's having what you're doing is having a positive impact on the world, in which case, great, it could be social or neutral, or negative. If it's negative, stop doing it. If it's positive and neutral, then you could be social entrepreneur if that's the label you would like. Okay, it's been more complex than that, but at least.
Yeah, but that's one of the most simplest definitions ever. So thanks for sharing that, Chris.
I think it's it was actually a great ending of our panel. I'll just add something that I kind of exhausted from all this labeling and divisions.
Yeah.
And for me, the current crisis really what Emiliya says first, the empathy, and I will just add this togetherness element that in a way was brought. I think there is an emergence of our togetherness. So instead of thinking who is an entrepreneur or a social entrepreneur, let's see what are the areas that we would like to work on so that we have a better world and that we avoid what happened this month. So it's, for me it's togetherness, authenticity, empathy, and these are kind of features that you cannot pretend that you have them. You either have them or you don't.
Well, that's something interesting from you, Lachman. I agree with that, guys. It's a very simple thing. Solve a problem, create a good solution, which someone would pay for, which creates a positive impact. End of the story. Call yourself social, anti-social, I don't care. These things out there. I think you've cracked the puzzle. So we are super short of time. We have 2 minutes, and let me at this point first and foremost thank you all for this amazing discussion. Really, I enjoyed every single word of it. Thank you for being the part of the panel. It was super enriching for me, and I'm sure for all our audiences. And at this point, let me invite back Alexandra for the closing remarks of this panel and introduce us to the next one, which is part of the program. Alex, over to you. Alex, there? We see you, but we don't hear you, Alex.
She looks confused.
Yeah, you should be hearing me now.
Yeah.
I just wanted to
thank
you
the movement
for,
started.
for this amazing discussion.
Yes.
Okay, we are all talking
Alex,
at one point.
One more try. Let's go.
Yeah, I think this time it will work. Thank you guys so much for this discussion and the great vibe you created with it. I can confirm from the perspective of an audience in this case that we enjoyed every single word as well.
Everyone can hear.
Very good insights.
Maybe that's
I
the
think very
case, yeah.
practical ideas and insights that everyone can learn from. With that, thank you for being part of that. And we'll continue with the sessions, starting with the next one at 12. It's going to be from Junior Achievement and on hacking the crisis through entrepreneurial mindset. Thank you and see you later.